Welcome to World Wrap, your global snapshot for Monday, May 19, 2025. Here's what's happening around the world. Global markets react to a delicate US-China tariff truce. Tensions in South Asia see cautious de-escalation efforts after last week's flare-up, and Europe grapples with economic data and the path ahead for Ukraine. These stories and more coming right up. In South Asia, a fragile calm persists between India and Pakistan following last week's military confrontations. While direct hostilities have ceased for now, both nations maintain heightened military readiness along the line of control in Kashmir. Over the weekend, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi held separate phone calls with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar, urging calm, restraint, and the avoidance of further escalation. Beijing stated it supports an early ceasefire and is willing to play a constructive role. India, meanwhile, continues high-level security reviews in Jammu and Kashmir, and some flight restrictions in northern Indian airports remain in place. In domestic India news, new data shows smartphone exports surged in the last fiscal year, becoming a top exported item, particularly to the US and Japan. The Securities and Exchange Board of India (SEBI) has also mandated the use of an electronic book mechanism for private debt placements above 20 crore rupees to enhance transparency. Across Southeast Asia, ASEAN nations are reportedly backing fair and free trade principles as they navigate the complexities of US tariff policies and global economic headwinds. The Philippines is advocating for an ASEAN-wide visa to boost regional tourism. In Thailand, badminton players Pearly Tan, Thina Muralatharan, and Kunlavut Viditsarn clinched titles at the Thailand Open over the weekend. In Indonesia, authorities are grappling with the aftermath of recent food poisoning incidents linked to a free meal program in Bogor, which has declared a health emergency. A Mount Luotobi eruption also triggered aviation warnings. In East Asia, Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba announced over the weekend a revamped strategy to industrialize quantum technology, aiming to make it a new industrial pillar for the country, with increased support for startups and human resource development in the field. This comes as South Korea bolsters security for its presidential candidates amid reported terror threats, following former President Yoon Suk Yeol's departure from his Conservative Party. Watch for the Reserve Bank of Australia's policy meeting decision this week, and further details on US-China trade negotiations. In China, markets are reacting today to the 90-day tariff reduction agreement reached with the United States in Geneva over the weekend. While this provides temporary relief, analysts remain cautious about the long road ahead for a comprehensive trade deal. Chinese industrial production and retail sales figures for April are also being closely watched today for indications of the economy's momentum. The government continues to emphasize policies aimed at boosting domestic demand and supporting the private sector. On the diplomatic front, China is also engaging with Latin American and Caribbean states through the ongoing China-CELAC Forum in Beijing, focusing on deepening cooperation. Reports today also indicate U.S. administration concerns over a potential deal for Alibaba's AI to be featured on Apple iPhones in China, citing potential implications for AI capabilities and data security. Across Africa, several key gatherings are underway or recently concluded. A working group meeting on the economic empowerment of returnee migrant domestic workers in Uganda begins today in Kampala, organized by the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Last week, the WSIS Plus 20 Africa Regional Review concluded in Benin, focusing on digital transformation. The Africa Dialogue series, held online and at the UN headquarters, also continues throughout May. Regional leaders are increasingly focused on fast-tracking the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, and promoting local value addition to spur sustainable development and create jobs. In Australia, financial markets are opening the week reacting to the US-China tariff truce, with the ASX 200 expected to see a subdued start, despite a positive finish on Wall Street Friday. Oil and gold prices are also influencing energy and mining stocks. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto over the weekend during his first overseas trip since re-election, focusing on strengthening bilateral defense and security ties. In New Zealand, there's ongoing debate in the healthcare sector regarding the impact of outsourcing hospital operations, while the government continues to develop its policy on social media access for minors. In other news, Australia's Queensland is set to open a trade office in Shenzhen, with Hong Kong as a gateway. In the Middle East, US President Donald Trump concluded his regional tour last week, which included stops in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, announcing significant economic and defense deals. The Arab League held a summit in Baghdad on Saturday, dominated by the war in Gaza. Leaders called for international funding to rebuild the Strip and rejected any forced displacement of Palestinians. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza remains acute, with aid agencies continuing to report severe challenges in delivering essentials, despite ongoing calls for a permanent ceasefire and unimpeded access. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are both advancing their economic diversification plans and engaging in regional diplomacy aimed at de-escalation. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in London today for a summit aimed at resetting trade and defence ties with the European Union. The UK hopes to reduce border friction for food and agricultural exports and potentially rejoin programs like Erasmus+, while the EU seeks agreements on issues like fishing rights. This initiative comes as both sides reassess their relationship post-Brexit amidst a changed global landscape. Over the weekend, Starmer held talks with leaders from the US, Italy, France, and Germany regarding the war in Ukraine and the need for a ceasefire. Across the EU, institutions are preparing for Europe Day celebrations this week, marking the 75th anniversary of the Schuman Declaration. Economically, recent data showed Europe's fast-moving consumer goods sector demonstrated resilience in 2024, though increasing economic pressures could stall momentum. In Germany, Chancellor Friedrich Merz's new government is now fully in place. In Russia, the country marked its Victory Day on May 9th, with Chinese President Xi Jinping in attendance, highlighting their strategic alignment. Russian forces continue their offensive operations in eastern Ukraine, with reports of intense fighting over the weekend. Short transition sound. Across Latin America, the China CELAC Forum in Beijing this week underscores China's growing influence and deepening ties with the region, focusing on trade, investment, and technology. In Brazil, the Supreme Court continues its examination of cases related to the January 2023 attacks on government buildings. The country is also gearing up to host the 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup. Argentina's government, under President Milei, is pushing ahead with its economic austerity program, which has seen some initial positive market reactions, but also significant social challenges due to high inflation. Mexico's presidential election campaigns are active, while countries like Chile and Colombia navigate global commodity markets and domestic reforms. A recent report indicated a worsening economic climate across much of Latin America in the first quarter of 2025, predating the recent US-China trade truce. Short transition sound. In sports, the PGA Championship concluded yesterday with Scottie Scheffler winning his third major title. In the NBA playoffs, the Oklahoma City Thunder advanced to the Western Conference Finals. In entertainment, the Indian crime drama Raid 2, starring A.J. Devon, continues its strong box office run, approaching the Rs 150 crore mark in India. And in tech, new scientific reports highlight the ongoing discovery of ancient human migration patterns, and even the potential for a hot side of the moon based on recent spacecraft data. That's World Wrap for Monday, May 19, 2025. Like and follow us for more daily updates from around the globe. See you tomorrow. Outro music fades out.